There are games that thrive on simplicity and teach us that you don't need a whole bunch of moving parts in order to have fun. And we aren't here to talk about those games. No, today we're talking about games that bury the fun beneath layers of systems, mechanics, interfaces, and rules. Games where just figuring out how to play is its own challenge. Complexity isn't a side effect here. It's the entire structure. So sit back, relax, buckle down, don't forget to make your cup of coffee, take your melatonin, and slap your mother, because we are coming in hot with number 1, Dwarf Fortress. There's hard, there's punishing, and then there's Dwarf Fortress, a game where you can die from exploding cats, cursed caverns, or just a minor plumbing miscalculation. It's the kind of game where people wear their failures like war medals, and you don't play Dwarf Fortress as much as you survive it. What begins as a colony management sim rapidly expands into a Byzantine system of fluid dynamics, Z-axis construction layering, organ-specific injury simulation, and procedural personality modeling for every dwarf creature in the world. Infrastructure can collapse from minor oversights. Water pressure alone can turn fortresses into tombs. The game simulates mining vein types, room value calculations, and social hierarchies down to the tantrum mechanics triggered by unsatisfied dwarves. Even the calendar systems, economic behaviors, and memory-based AI introduce cascading consequences that defy casual play. Despite its barrier to entry, or perhaps because of it, Dwarf Fortress became legendary. Its phrase, "losing its fun," has become a slogan of ironic reverence. For a game that looks like something you'd accidentally boot in DOS, it commands deep loyalty, and even inspired entire modern subgenres. In 2022, a Steam version added tile sets and a tutorial, but it's still the same merciless simulator at its core. Whether you spend 100 hours building or 30 seconds flooding a mushroom farm with magma, it earns its place among the most lovingly, wildly overcomplicated games ever made. Number 2, Path of Exile. If you've ever opened a skill tree and felt overwhelmed, Path of Exile laughs in your face and hands you a galaxy map of passive nodes instead. It's the kind of game where you can accidentally break your character 40 hours in, not from dying, but from leveling wrong. And don't expect mercy from the tutorial. This game expects you to already be taking notes. At the center of the game's infamous complexity is the passive skill tree, a sprawling web of over 1,300 nodes that link attributes, damage types, resistances, and class-specific synergies. Then come the Ascendancy classes, each with its own miniature trees and decision points that must be navigated during trial-style gauntlets. Players must also manage gem socket links, gear affixes, currency crafting systems, and flask mechanics, all of which require in-depth knowledge of layered interactions and mathematical thresholds. Seasonal updates known as leagues continuously overhaul or add mechanics, many of which remain active in the game's ever-expanding endgame. A content graveyard littered with abandoned systems that players still must learn to avoid. Despite its overwhelming learning curve, Path of Exile is one of the most enduring ARPGs in the world, especially revered by players who felt Diablo 3 did not go far enough. Its depth allows for endless experimentation, but also punishes ignorance with irreversible failure. Build guides have become an essential part of playing, not because players want to optimize, but because not following one might make the game unplayable. Number 3, Aurora 4X. This one is less of a game and more of a lifestyle. Aurora 4X is the kind of game you discover on a forum at 3 a.m., download out of morbid curiosity, and then spend 3 weeks trying to figure out how to launch a mining drone without accidentally inventing interstellar communism. There's no graphics, there's no music, there's only data and despair. Built-in Visual Basic, and entirely UI-driven, Aurora 4X offers players control over a human or alien civilization spreading through space. But everything, and I mean everything, must be micromanaged. Ship design down to sensor arrays, officer training and assignments, terraforming ratios, orbital mechanics, resource tracking across different colonies, and combat simulations that are measured in 5-second increments. There are separate modules for shipyards, logistics, research labs, and ground invasions, each each layered with toggleable submenus and multi-phase planning sequences. Something as simple as moving a fleet between planets may require half a dozen pre-configured steps across entirely different menu screens. And yet, for its small but devoted player base, Aurora 4X is a masterpiece of procedural storytelling and deep space sandboxing. It's not uncommon to see playthrough journals with dozens of pages documenting one single galactic war. Not because it's fun necessarily, but because it feels real. The game was developed by just one man, a British Navy officer. He designed the game as a labor of love, and it shows in the terrifying amount of control you're given. It's free, it's cruel, and it's proof that some people don't just want games. They want spreadsheets with missile payloads. Number 4. Xenoblade Chronicles X. At first glance, this looks like your standard JRPG fare. Anime characters, giant alien monsters, and a sci-fi world waiting to be explored. But then you start unlocking systems, and menus, and certifications. Suddenly you're 30 hours deep and still stuck in a tutorial, wondering why you need a government permit to fly your robot. And yes, you actually do need a government permit to fly that robot. The core combat revolves around cooldown-based skill chaining, party positioning, and weapon loadout management, all of which change depending on whether you're on foot or piloting a Skell, the game's giant mechs. But unlocking the ability to use a Skell involves passing a multi-part licensing test, managing Skell fuel resources, and completing side content tied to your affinity and party members and reputation across zones. Equipment customization includes socketed augments, class-based stat gates, and resource gating tied to a faction control of hex zones in the world. Fast travel requires a whole separate network you have to build. Even basic map reading becomes an ordeal due to the multi-layered vertical design and overwhelming icon clutter. Players who stuck with it found a mechanically dense but rewarding game, one that pushed the Wii U's hardware to the limit and featured one of the largest open worlds in console gaming at the time. But many bounced off the front-loaded systems, obtuse progression bottlenecks, and poor documentation. It's the kind of game that doesn't just throw you in the deep end. It builds a second, deeper pool under the first one and forgets to tell you it's there until you drown in it. Number 5. Hearts of Iron 4. On paper, it's a game about World War II, but in practice, it's a 5-hour lesson on how to mismanage supply lines, accidentally break an alliance, and lose half your navy in the English Channel because you forgot to research radar. Hearts of Iron 4 doesn't just simulate war, it simulates every single granular thing that leads up to it. The real game lives inside a web of national focus trees, division templates, logistics routing, and doctrinal tech paths, all of which must be precisely coordinated across land, sea, and air. Production chains involve military factories, civilian industry balancing, and resource access via trade, which can collapse instantly if a convoy route gets raided. Naval invasions require meticulously timed operations, proper air coverage, and unit planning weeks in advance. Research takes on a bureaucratic rhythm where planning upgrades too early can kneecap your current army and skipping one doctrine can doom your entire campaign. On top of that, the AI and hidden modifiers ensure that historical accuracy is more of a wish than a guarantee. And yet, for a certain kind of player, this is peak strategy bliss. Hearts of Iron 4 has spawned an enormous modding community, YouTube empires, and some of the most committed alt history theorists the internet has ever seen. The game has only grown more complex throughout the years of DLC, each one adding new mechanics, systems, or complications to an already overstuffed engine. It's not just fighting World War II, it's about rebuilding it from scratch every single time. Number 6. Monster Hunter World. It looks like a simple premise. Go out, slay a big monster, come home and make a cool hat. But then it starts layering on the systems. Elemental weaknesses, weapon-specific stamina mechanics, armor set bonuses, and enough crafting materials to make a zoologist weep. Monster Hunter World pretends to be approachable, but beneath its gorgeous visuals lies a tangle of deeply nested mechanics and unspoken rules. Every hunt hinges on your understanding of hit zone values, damage types, that is, slashing, blunt, projectile, the usual stuff, and weapon sharpness tiers, which all interact differently with each monster. Preparing for combat means crafting specific meal buffs, managing item loadouts, and choosing mantles that add situational bonuses. Weapons aren't just different in animation, they have wholly unique combo systems and often internal resources to juggle. Beyond battle, players must navigate armor skills that stack and scale, charm crafting, decorations, that is, runes, and limited time event bonuses that subtly alter the game's power curve. None of this is explained in full, and missteps in build planning can lead to dozens of hours wasted farming the wrong gear. Despite the grind and information overload, Monster Hunter World became Capcom's best-selling game of all time. Veterans embraced its depth, and newcomers stuck around long enough to eventually get it and fall in love with it. But the learning curve remains steep, and full mastery requires deep dives into fan wikis, damage calculators, and YouTube weapons guides. In the end, it's not just a hunting game. It's a textbook disguised as an action RPG, and graduation takes hundreds of hours. Number 7. UnderRail. The setup sounds familiar. A post-apocalyptic society, dark tunnels, mutated beasts, scavenging, but then you open the character creation menu in UnderRail and realize you need to plan your endgame build before you've taken a single step. It's Fallout meets spreadsheets, unforgiving, dense, and totally unapologetic about it. Right from the start, the player is asked to distribute base stats, skills, and feats, the latter of which often has strict stat or skill prerequisites that can lock out entire playstyles if built wrong. Combat is grid-based and turn-based, but success hinges on careful manipulation of action points, movement penalties, energy shield mechanics, and weapon synergies. There is no level scaling. Enemies remain lethal and unmoving in strength, meaning poor planning leads to unavoidable difficulty spikes. The game also features complex crafting systems, faction interactions, and quest lines with no clear resolution paths, often leaving players wondering if they just permanently failed something vital. Respecking? Not an option. If you mess up your build, you start over. In spite of, or maybe because of, its brutality, UnderRail has earned deep respect among old-school RPG fans. Its world is atmospheric and coherent, its mechanics meticulous, and its refusal to compromise has made it a cult classic for players who crave challenge over comfort. But it's not for tourists. Diving into UnderRail without a build guide is like base jumping with dental floss. You're pretty much asking for a bad time. Number 8. Divinity Original Sin 2. At first, it feels like a classic turn-based RPG with a little extra flair. A party of misfits, a magical plague, some elemental spells, but Divinity Original Sin 2 doesn't just want you to play it, it wants you to engineer every single moment. And if you're not prepared to experiment like a mad alchemist in the middle of combat, you're probably going to get set on fire by accident. Or electrocuted. Or both. Combat is built around a deep and punishing environmental interaction system where oil, poison, blood, and water can all chain react with status effects, elemental spells, and surface-altering abilities. The initiative system means you can lose fights in the first few turns if your squishiest party member goes first and eats a meteor to the face. Builds hinge on action point optimization, armor-splitting mechanics, and understanding that physical and magical defenses exist on entirely separate tracks. Add in character-specific origin stories, skill synergy limitations, and crafting and bartering systems with no centralized inventory, and even shopping begins to feel like a bit of a boss fight. The game was widely praised for its depth, freedom, and tactical flexibility, and rightfully so, but new players are often left googling, "Why did my fire spell kill my tank?" within the first few hours. Divinity Original Sin 2 gives you all the tools to solve a problem, but punishes you if you don't read the invisible instruction manual taped to the bottom of the toolbox. It's brilliant, but brutal. A thinking man's RPG where forgetting to check the floor means you might spend the next 10 minutes watching your entire party bleed out on electrified ice. Number 9. Crusader Kings 3. You start off thinking this is a game about kings and queens, but about 30 minutes in, you're knee-deep in a plot to murder your stepbrother's concubine because she's threatening your daughter's husband's claim to a county that technically belongs to your ex-wife. Welcome to Crusader Kings 3, where war is what happens when scheming, seduction, and secret illegitimate children don't get you what you want fast enough. Beneath the medieval drama lies a heaving mass of interconnected systems. Dynasty prestige, faith doctrines, vassal opinion scores, culture tech trees, succession laws, and diplomatic webs that can shift dramatically every time someone coughs in Norway. Characters are driven by trait-based AI, meaning a paranoid duke might start a witch trial while your lustful heir is busy seducing his sister-in-law, all while you're trying to pass a tax reform. Military power is important, sure, but often meaningless compared to a well-timed bribe, blackmail scheme, or papal favor. And if your heir dies unexpectedly? Well, congratulations, your empire might now belong to a 7-year-old who has a stutter and a -12 learning score. Regardless of its soap opera absurdities, Crusader Kings 3 is one of the most engrossing and replayable strategy games out there. Its simulation of medieval power is simultaneously comical, horrifying, and strangely plausible, but the complexity is relentless. For many new players, the first few hours feel like being handed a scroll that's written in Latin and asked to run a country. It's a crown jewel of emergent storytelling, but also a crash course on why monarchies were such a bad idea. Number 10, the Kerbal Space Program. When it starts, it's all smiles. Cute little green astronauts, colorful rocket parts, and a cartoonish space center. And then you try to make your first launch, only to realize you've built an airborne death trap with no aerodynamic stability, no stage separation, and a tragic misunderstanding of gravity. This is Kerbal Space Program, where the line between game and orbital mechanics simulator is as thin as your failing heat shield. While the presentation is playful, the systems beneath are anything but that. Successfully building and launching a craft demands an understanding of Delta-V budgeting, thrust-to-weight ratios, mass distribution, drag coefficients, you know, the usual stuff. Even after reaching space, players must calculate orbital transfers, gravity assists, Holman transfers, and rendezvous sequences using real-world physics, no less. Misalign a trajectory even slightly and you'll find yourself hurtling into deep space, or crashing into a moon with just enough time to reflect on your bad math. There's no real tutorial for any of this, only trial, error, and eventual obsession. Despite the punishing learning curve, Kerbal Space Program has built a passionate following of would-be rocket scientists, educators, and modders. It's even been used in real aerospace training settings, but make no mistake, this is a game where complexity is the main attraction, not an obstacle. It teaches you how to think like an engineer by making you fail like one, explosively, repeatedly, and often hilariously. And once you finally nail the perfect lunar landing, you'll feel like you actually deserve a degree. Number 11, Victoria 3. So take Civilization, and take the tax system within Civilization. Now make that the main character of a game. That's what you're dealing with in Victoria 3. It's less about war and more about bureaucratic survival in the face of events like the Industrial Revolution, colonial tensions, and the slow realization that your lower class wants to burn everything to the ground. Running a country here is very similar to running a government help desk, except it's for aristocrats and anarchists at the same time. Let me explain. What makes Victoria 3 unique is its pop simulation system, where every individual citizen belongs to a class, culture, religion, and profession, and every group has political opinions, income levels, and standard of living demands that dynamically shift based on your laws and economy. You won't just manage resources, you'll be managing supply chains, trade routes, infrastructure bottlenecks, and labor availability across colonial holdings and national borders. Something as seemingly benign as adjusting the price of grain can spiral into famine, revolution, or just flat-out geopolitical collapse. Warfare exists, but it's largely abstracted. The real battlefield is your nation's production graph, where failing to balance iron and fabric output is the true path to ruin. Victoria 3 was hotly anticipated and immediately polarizing. Some praised it for reinventing grad strategy as an economic simulation with real teeth, while others felt like they were staring at a performance sheet that threatened to unionize if they didn't subsidize steel mills fast enough. It's immersive, detailed, and often brilliant. However, it's not for everyone, but for the people who do love it, they really love it. Number 12, Digital Combat Simulator World. So, you think you're about to fly a jet, throttle up, hit a few buttons, feel cool, and then you open the cockpit in DCS World and realize every switch, dial, and knob works, all 300 plus of them. Suddenly you're not a gamer anymore. You're a trainee in a multi-million-dollar military simulator, and the plane you're flying is actively judging your lack of aviation knowledge. With the full fidelity aircraft systems modeling in the game, every button in the cockpit is interactable and serves a function. As I said, cold starts require players to follow multi-step startup procedures that mirror real-world military manuals, including fuel pump activation, radar warm-ups, INS alignment, and weapon station arming. Combat is no less demanding. Players must manage radar sweep modes, countermeasure programming, targeting pods, and data link integration, often while flying at Mach 1 while also interpreting real-time instructions coming from the ground. And that's assuming you haven't accidentally disabled your HUD while trying to switch radio channels. Each aircraft in the game is its own beast, essentially a separate game within the game with unique mechanics, controls, and training requirements. While the learning curve is damn near vertical, DCS World is beloved by aviation enthusiasts and military sim diehards both. Its attention to detail is unmatched, often used in real-world flight training context. But for casual players expecting ace combat, it's more like showing up to flight school with a plastic joystick and being asked to launch from an aircraft carrier at night in a thunderstorm. Like most games on this list, you're probably going to have a bad time if you're a casual. Number 13, EVE Online. You might log in expecting space battles and cool spaceships, but what you're gonna get instead is an economics degree, a political science thesis, and maybe a corporate betrayal or two, all delivered through nested menus and terrifying spreadsheets that might actually be influencing real-world GDP. EVE Online doesn't just ask you to play, it dares you to become infrastructure itself. While you can mine asteroids or haul cargo solo, the game's depth lies in its player-driven economy, corporate alliance warfare, and real-time market manipulation that can occur. These ships aren't just units, they're investments, built with harvested minerals, purchased blueprints, and crafted modules, all priced by a fully player-run market. Every ship lost is a real economic setback, and every war has logistics chains that stretch across entire star systems. There are skill queues that train in real time, as in hours or days of real-world waiting, and corporation roles that allow players to manage taxes, diplomacy, tutorial control, or even espionage in some cases. Scale of investment is not limited just to time, it also extends to real-world money. While EVE technically does not allow direct ship purchases with cash, its in-game currency, ISK, can be legally acquired through a system called Plex, which players buy with real money and sell on the market. This has led to ship losses valued in the thousands of dollar range, with some of the largest battles in gaming history, like the bloodbath of B-R5RB, resulting in over $300,000 worth of in-game assets destroyed. Despite being darn near impenetrable to many, EVE has carved out a legacy as gaming's most complex social sandbox. Massive battles involving thousands of players can hinge on supply shortages, covert operations, or a single misclicked warp command. There are documented instances of spies that infiltrated alliances for months just to assassinate a fleet commander mid-war. For most, EVE Online is less a game and more of a galactic second life, complete with betrayal, industry, and a wild amount of financial analysis. It's a cold, brutal place, but for those who understand it, there's nothing else quite like it. And up next, number 14, Shadow Empire. Yeah, it looks like Civilization, but with a post-apocalyptic paint job. There's hexes, tanks, sci-fi ruins, but then you realize you're not just managing a city or a war. You're running a crumbling dystopian bureaucracy where every soldier needs a paper trail and every food truck runs on hope. This is Shadow Empire. The game drops you into a procedurally generated planet, complete with atmosphere data, resource placement, flora types, and planetary weather patterns, all of which affect how your society evolves. You're tasked with rebuilding a nation from the ashes, which means managing civilian economies, military logistics, recon intelligence, and multi-layered leadership casts, where every governor, general, and advisor has personality traits, loyalty scores, and faction affiliations that impact decision-making. Want to move a tank division? You better make sure the road's intact, that the fuel has arrived, and that your logistics officer isn't in a cold war with the transport minister. On top of that, you'll be juggling political points, policy debates, unit production bottlenecks, and research trees for technologies like laser tanks, synthetic foods, or even things like religious propaganda. Praised by masochistic strategy fans and almost completely unknown to everyone else, Shadow Empire is a brutally granular simulation of power, supply, and claps. It's one of the only games where losing control of your bureaucracy, not your military, is how empires crumble. For those who love their war games with a side of internal HR management and oxygen scarcity, it's a masterpiece. For everybody else, well, you're probably starting to see a pattern with this list, huh? Number 15, Rimworld. Now, of course, you start with your little sci-fi colony. You have to keep everyone fed, build some walls, fend off the occasional space pirate. You know, no big deal. And then your doctor gets food poisoning, your pet alpaca starts a fire, and one of your colonists has a psychotic break because the sculpture in their bedroom wasn't good enough. This is Rimworld, where every pixel has feelings, and everything that can go wrong eventually will. What makes Rimworld so deeply complex is its storyteller-driven simulation. 3 AI narrators control the flow of disasters, pushing you into situations that test your colony's emotional, physical, and logistical breaking points. Each of your citizens has a stack of traits, moods, desires, and health conditions, all of which interact with environmental variables like temperature, light levels, and relationship histories. One bad day could set off a chain reaction. A colonist could get dumped, have a mental health crisis, start a fire, which causes a power outage, which spoils the food, which triggers a raid, and now your entire community is going to be fighting in the dark while someone is giving birth in the freezer. Add in surgery systems, organ harvesting, drug manufacturing, animal breeding, and prisoner management, and the game goes from survival sim to moral collapse simulator. Loved for its emergent storytelling and infinite replayability, Rimworld has earned its reputation as one of the best complex sims out there, but it's also become a meme factory of cascading failure. This game is a chaotic behavioral laboratory where you learn to fear squirrels, despise weather, and keep your flamethrower colonists far away from your wooden kitchen. In short, it's a systems-driven hellscape, and for that it earns its spot on this list. Number 16, Pathologic Classic HD. This is a survival game. It's just not the kind you're used to. There are no crafting benches, no base upgrades, and no clear win condition. Instead, Pathologic drops you into a decaying town where the only real enemies are time, disease, and moral paralysis. It's not about thriving, it's about enduring long enough to understand how deeply you've already failed. You will play as one of 3 healers sent to investigate a plague overtaking a remote steppe town. The game runs on a strict 12-day real-time schedule where events unfold whether you're ready or not. Every moment you spend walking, sleeping, or talking is not spent helping, and there is no rewind. You will juggle hunger, exhaustion, infection, inventory weight, trust among districts, and your own bodily integrity, all while piecing together a fragmented narrative that frequently lies to you. Resources are finite and often misleadingly priced, meaning survival often requires acts of desperation, bartering morphine from orphans, robbing the sick, or skipping critical storylines just to buy a loaf of bread. Failure is built right in. You will lose people, and you will make things worse. Critically polarizing but fiercely beloved, Pathologic isn't designed to be fun. It's designed to make you feel like a desperate stranger trying to hold together a world that's already dying. The HD remaster keeps its infamous mechanics intact while cleaning up the visuals, but the experience remains fundamentally the same. Cold, haunting, and quietly brilliant. For those willing to suffer for meaning, it's unforgettable. For everyone else, it's a plague you'll abandon by day 3. Number 17, Factorio. Oh boy, here we go. So the premise is simple. Land on an alien planet and build a factory to get home. But Factorio doesn't stop at assembly lines. It keeps going until you're balancing production ratios like a supply chain analyst with a caffeine addiction. What starts as a few machines quickly becomes an obsession, a lifestyle, and possibly a minor psychological condition. The complexity ramps up through logistic systems, that is, conveyor belts, inserters, and crafting stations that must be precisely timed and positioned to optimize output. Then comes the ratios. Iron plates, to gears, to circuits, to science packs, each with its own timing and output needs. But it doesn't stop at belts. Players can unlock train networks, fluid dynamics, nuclear reactors, and robotic delivery systems, all requiring their own infrastructure and power management. You'll need to manage pollution, which draws in alien attacks, forcing you to build automated defense systems and evolve your designs to maintain efficiency while surviving. Factorio doesn't punish failure, it punishes inefficiency, and the deeper you go, the more your build will just start to feel like a precision-engineered nightmare brought to life. Beloved by engineers, perfectionists, and anyone who's ever min-maxed their morning routine, Factorio has become the gold standard for automated games. It's easy to start, hard to master, and impossible to stop optimizing. Entire player communities exist just to argue about the most efficient smelting layouts. If that sounds like any sort of fun to you, well, you're gonna wonder where Factorio's been your entire life. As for me, I'm gonna stay over here in the filthy casual camp. Number 18, The Age of Decadence. So, looks like your traditional isometric RPG romp, right? You've got swords, shields, factions, quests. But 15 minutes in, you're gonna realize you can tie in conversation, fail a questline permanently just by asking the wrong question, and make a build so ineffective that you can't beat literally anything. The Age of Decadence is less about playing a hero and more about surviving a world that does not care that you exist, using a rule system that demands your full commitment. The combat is brutal, but it's also mostly avoidable. The game can be finished without drawing your weapon once, but only if you've built for it. Its defining feature is its hard skill check system, where success isn't influenced by RNG or modifiers, it's purely binary. You either meet the stat requirement or you don't. If you've invested in persuasion but not into streetwise, a peaceful solution can turn into a bloodbath. If your combat doesn't specialize correctly, that is into daggers, axes, or ranged, you may not survive the game's first real fight. Your choices are permanent. Quests can lock or fail without warning, and many dialogue options simply vanish if your build isn't tailored to access them. Factions offer distinct and often mutually exclusive paths, but many players won't see more than one or two in a full playthrough anyway. What makes the Age of Decadence stand out isn't just its difficulty, but its conviction. It fully commits to a design where knowledge, planning, and failure are part of the intended experience. It doesn't level with you, it doesn't adjust, it simply asks if you came prepared. For players tired of RPGs where everyone eventually becomes a god, this is a harsh and strangely refreshing alternative. One that offers depth, consequence, and zero pity. Number 19, Project Zomboid. Whenever you spawn in, you're in a quiet neighborhood with a butter knife and a bad haircut. But before too long, you'll be starving, infected, bleeding, and possibly dead from drinking tainted drinking water. Project Zomboid doesn't care about your survival instincts. It wants to know if you can manage agricultural cycles, mental breakdowns, and respiratory infections while building a rain barrel system from planks and garbage bags. At its core, it's a zombie survival sim with sandbox elements, but it pushes realism into overdrive. Every limb on your character can be injured separately, with unique treatments for scratches, lacerations, deep wounds, or burns. Your injuries can become infected, causing status effects that will snowball if left untreated. Your clothing will have both insulation and wind resistance, while weather affects body temperature, mood, and drying times for laundry. Combat is deliberate and dangerous. Every swing consumes stamina, affects panic levels, and can lead to exhaustion or overexertion if you're not tracking your calories. Survival involves farming, fishing, carpentry, metalworking, and power grid maintenance, each skill leveling slowly over time, often behind tool and book gates. And we're not even going to touch on the NPC behavior mods, custom loot balancing, or base fortification strategies that exist out there. Project Zomboid has quietly become one of the deepest survival sims ever made. Its complexity isn't just mechanical, it's psychological. You're not building a character, you're sustaining one, constantly adapting to a world that gets more dangerous the longer you live in it. Mastery takes dozens of hours, and even then, all it takes is one mistake, one open window, one untreated wound for the whole structure to come crashing down. As the game constantly reminds you, this is how you die. Number 20, Rule the Waves 2. Rule the Waves 2 is not the sort of game that you play for fun. You play it because you woke up one day and realized you wanted to micromanage a 20th century naval arms race across 5 decades, one gun caliber at a time. It's a war game, a budget simulator, a logistics spreadsheet, and a diplomatic crisis generator, all wrapped in a UI that looks like it was salvaged from a 1960s submarine. At its core, the game revolves around designing, constructing, and deploying your own fleet from the early 1900s into roughly the early Cold War. But unlike most strategy games, you don't just click the Build Battleship button. You design it, selecting hull size, turret layouts, armor schemes, ammunition types, engine power, torpedo defense layers, and aircraft support capacities. Then you assign officers, manage dry dock capacity, adjust research priorities across 20 plus categories, and budget everything against an inflexible peacetime economy. During wartime, you're not controlling ships moment to moment. You're issuing strategic orders, responding to intelligence reports, and making sure your cruiser design from 10 years ago isn't being outclassed by a rival's new destroyer squadron. Even the battles themselves are a nested simulation, tracking wind direction, hit location, crew experience, and shell dispersion patterns. Rule the Waves 2 is dense, ugly, and unrelenting, but for the right kind of player, it's an unmatched naval command fantasy. The sense of ownership over every ship you design makes every battle personal, and the tension of managing empire-level logistics makes even small skirmishes feel meaningful. It's not just complex, it's intentionally opaque, and that's exactly what makes it so rewarding to master. Number 21, Disco Elysium. You wake up, hungover, in your underwear, in a trashed hotel room, with no memory of your name. And that's the tutorial. And from there, Disco Elysium hands you one of the strangest and most over-engineered character systems ever stuffed into a dialogue-driven RPG, and tells you to talk your way through a murder investigation using internal monologues, emotionally unstable statistics, and a thought cabinet that might convince you communism is a personality trait. More on that in a second. The game's most famous feature is its 24 internal skills, which act like personalities vying for control inside your head. Logic, empathy, half-light, and electrochemistry all argue within you, and sometimes override your choices. The result is a constant mental tug-of-war where even simple actions like looking at a corpse or talking to a child can spin into existential breakdowns, hallucinations, or fascistic rants. Layered atop all of that is the aforementioned thought cabinet, a passive upgrade tree where you equip philosophical insights, some of which take in-game time to internalize and can backfire completely. There are no combat mechanics in the traditional sense, but every encounter is a series of calculated risk checks, many of which pull from stacked modifiers, clothing bonuses, and traits earned from trauma. For those willing to dig into the systems, Disco Elysium is stunning. A surreal, genre-bending RPG where success feels like outmaneuvering your own personality disorders. But for new players expecting a standard detective game, it can feel a bit like reading a philosophy textbook. It's not just complex, it's dense, erratic, and designed to make sure no two players ever agree on what the hell is going on. Number 22, Workers and Resources, Soviet Republic. So what we have here is a Cold War city builder with a Soviet coat of paint. But Workers and Resources doesn't just ask you to construct cities. It demands you manage every supply chain, every citizen's schedule, and every logistics route with the precision of a nervous Soviet factory manager one bad decision away from getting purged. There are no global money cheats, no autopilot systems, and no abstracted labor. Everything from bricks to school teachers must be created, transported, and maintained by your own infrastructure. That means setting up quarries, concrete plants, bus lines, warehouse depots, rail networks, and fuel stations just to build a single apartment block. Power doesn't just flow, it needs transformers and voltage regulation. Education, healthcare, and productivity all depend on citizen transit times, consumer goods, and radio tower coverage. Even food supply chains must be built from the ground up, including harvesting crops, processing them into meals, and then trucking them to individual shops, all while avoiding traffic jams and the omnipresent threat of underfunding. What makes Soviet Republic especially complex is that it simulates everything at once, including economic exports, custom import tariffs, construction labor availability, and vehicle part depreciation. It's not just about growth, it's about sustainability under pressure. Fail to plan far enough ahead, and your entire socialist experiment collapses into food riots and dead power grids. For fans of deep simulation, it's a brilliant, unpolished gem. For everyone else, it's a city planner's fever dream wrapped in steel and bureaucracy. And number 23 is Unreal World. The UI is that of a forgotten DOS program. The gameplay starts with you picking a Finnish tribe and wondering why your character dies every time you try to light a fire. Unreal World isn't just a survival game, though. It's the first survival game, and also the oldest still active one. Released in 1992 and updated continuously ever since, it laid the groundwork for the entire survival genre long before the term even existed. Set in Iron Age Finland, the game drops you into a procedurally generated landscape full of rivers, forests, wildlife, and nothing resembling mercy. You'll need to track animals, build shelters, preserve meat, craft clothing, and manage nutrition, but every task is broken into steps. You won't just hunt, you'll stalk, set traps, wait, kill the animal, and then butcher. Want to build a cabin? You gotta chop down trees, strip the bark, process the timber, stack the walls, and then hope it doesn't collapse. Even something as basic as boiling water can involve navigating seasonal constraints, vessel weight limits, and of course firewood availability. There are no quest markers, no XP bars, just survival. Granular, brutal, and according to some, weirdly calming once it all clicks. UnRail World stands out not just for its realism or its complexity, but for its genre-defining status. It predates Minecraft, Don't Starve, and The Long Dark by decades, and yet still outclasses them in systems depth. Skills progress slowly and organically. Injuries must be cleaned, bound, and monitored. Time passes one action at a time, and the smallest oversight, like forgetting to cure meat before it spoils, can end a character's run. It's not just a complex survival sim, it's the one that started all complex survival sims. Number 24. The Occupation. You are a journalist investigating a government cover-up in a retro-futuristic version of 1980s Britain. You have 4 hours, real time, to find the truth. And that's the setup. What you actually get is a high-stakes research sim where the challenge isn't combat, but navigating security schedules, decrypting terminals, reading memos, and catching liars in their own paperwork. The Occupation doesn't explain itself. It expects you to act like a journalist who knows they're already so far behind. The game unfolds in real time with no objective markers, no quest logs, and no saves to lean on. You explore a sprawling office complex while its employees go about their day. Want to uncover a key piece of information? Well, you might need to break into a filing cabinet, or hide under a desk to avoid a security guard and connect someone's ID badge to a redacted HR report you found 2 hours ago. All while keeping track of your upcoming interviews and how much each person is lying to you. The game's central mechanic is simple on the surface. Find evidence, confront suspects, but actually executing that loop means parsing through emails, audio logs, safe codes, policy documents, meeting schedules, and contradictions between testimony and archival data. The Occupation is divisive, partly because it's buggy, but also partly because it's demanding in a way few modern games are. It doesn't want to guide you. It wants to see if you're paying attention. For players who love deduction under pressure and the feeling of piecing together a scandal from scraps of forgotten data, it's a uniquely stressful gem. But for everyone else, you might as well just go to the office in real life. It would be more fun. Number 25. Clockwork Empires. On the surface, it looks like a quirky steampunk colony builder, complete with Victorian coats and mustache-twirling bureaucrats. But Clockwork Empires isn't really about building a town. It's about trying to run a society held together by meat grinders, collapsing societal structures, and a godforsaken jobs menu that may as well be a Lovecraftian artifact. You will be managing colonists, all of whom have individual memories, beliefs, and relationships, in a fragile frontier settlement overseen by the Empire. They'll work if they feel like it, fight if they're not traumatized, and worship forbidden gods if you don't provide them enough stew. Systems include food preservation, labor division, construction permissions, and military hierarchies, but all of it is routed through a simulation-based AI that responds to emotion, environment, and whether someone saw too many Eldritch artifacts last week. Even object ownership is tracked, so if two colonists think they own the same stove, they might fight, mourn, or just starve. All of this rendered in a semi-broken engine where task prioritization is just a suggestion, and the most terrifying moment is when the colonists stop talking. Clockwork Empires was ambitious, but buggy, and also beloved by a small group of players who saw it not as a colony sim, but more as a chaos simulator. It's a game where failure isn't loud, it's slow, weird, and deeply unsettling. 1 minute you're managing work crews, the next you're burying a dead priest in a haunted cabbage field because the Empire sent a memo about tax compliance. It's not just needlessly complex, it's actively allergic to stability, and that's just the point. Next up at number 26, Deadnaut. Deadnaut looks like a tactical squad game, but it plays more like a broken command line interface that's held together with duct tape. You don't control your squad directly, you guide them remotely, with delayed input, indirect feedback, and limited information. You see, all of the systems are one layer removed from your control, which means that the errors compound fast. The squad itself is a liability. Each member has a personality, a mental profile, and a breaking point. Stress, fear, and trauma alter their behavior mid-mission, sometimes disabling key actions or overriding your commands entirely. You're expected to manage positioning, equipment, and combat readiness without knowing if the squad will actually do what you told them, or how close they are to a breakdown. Combat adds another layer of chaos as weapon heat, armor efficiency, and unit cohesion all factor into engagements you don't see clearly and you can't pause. The real challenge comes from the interface. You're managing multiple systems in parallel, routing commands, balancing power, tracking logs, diagnosing unknown threats, and making judgment calls based on partial data. There's no tutorial, and most mechanics aren't labeled. It's entirely possible to lose because a squad mate misread a command due to stress, or because you failed to notice a system silently failing 2 menus deep. Deadnaut demands constant adaptation and rewards players who can reverse engineer problems under pressure. If you're the masochist seeking tactical strategy filtered through real-time system management and unpredictable AI behavior, this is one of the most punishing examples of that ever made. Number 27, Snowrunner. Snowrunner masquerades as a driving game, but operates more like a logistics simulator where terrain is the primary adversary. Every task, be it delivering cargo or replacing infrastructure, demands meticulous planning and an intimate understanding of your vehicle's capabilities. The game's complexity stems from its intricate simulation of physics and terrain interactions. The mud, snow, and water each affect traction differently, requiring players to adjust tire types, engage differential locks, and manage weight distribution. One miscalculation can lead to a vehicle bogged down miles from assistance, turning a simple delivery mission into a multi-vehicle recovery operation. Vehicle management is another layer of depth. Over 60 vehicles, each with unique strengths, can be customized with various upgrades. However, unlocking and affording these enhancements necessitates completing challenging missions, often in unforgiving conditions. Fuel consumption isn't merely a stat, it's a constant looming threat. Engaging all-wheel drive or using the winch increases fuel usage, and running out of fuel in remote areas can halt progress entirely, forcing players to devise complex refueling strategies. The game offers very little hand-holding. Players must scout routes, assess environmental hazards, and adapt on the fly. The absence of fast travel or quick fixes means every decision carries weight, and errors can have cascading consequences. Snowrunner transforms the mundane act of driving into a high-stakes exercise in problem-solving. Its demand for foresight, adaptability, and patience cements its place among these brutal and unforgiving games. Number 28, MechWarrior 5, Mercenaries. This game seeks to immerse players in the Battletech universe, where piloting a battle mech is just the beginning. The game intricately weaves together real-time combat, strategic resource management, and detailed customization, demanding a comprehensive understanding of its multifaceted systems. Combat is a nuanced affair. Each battle mech, ranging from 25 to 100 tons, handles differently, with weight affecting speed, armor, and weapon capacity. You will have to manage heat levels meticulously. Excessive firing can overheat systems, leading to temporary shutdowns and vulnerability. Weapon systems vary in range and damage, requiring strategic loadouts tailored to specific missions. Environmental factors such as terrain and weather further influence combat effectiveness. Beyond the battlefield, players will assume the role of a mercenary commander. This involves negotiating contracts, balancing reputation with various factions, and making strategic decisions about mission engagements. Resource management is critical. Funds are needed for repairs, upgrades, and pilot salaries. Travel between systems incurs cost and time, and being in a conflict zone can limit access to essential services like repairs and mech purchases. Customization adds yet more layers of complexity to this cake. Mechs can be outfitted with a variety of weapons, armor types, and support systems. However, modifications must consider weight limits, heat generation, and compatibility. Salvaging parts from missions becomes essential, especially when your resources are scarce. Overall reception has been mixed. Fans of the series praise its faithful mech handling, large-scale destruction, and satisfying customization depth. At the same time, many criticize the game's repetitive mission structure, inconsistent AI, and lackluster economic feedback. Mods have helped push the game closer to its potential, but unmodded, it's often seen as a strong foundation that still struggles under its own ambition. For those wanting to live inside the cockpit of a multi-ton walking tank, there's nothing else on the market that's quite like it, but it takes patience to fully appreciate the experience. Number 29, Barotrauma. It's a co-op submarine simulator where the goal is pretty straightforward. Complete missions in the oceans of Europa without dying in a watery grave. The difficulty arises from the fact that your submarine is barely held together, crewed by untrained friends or unreliable AI, and surrounded by crushing pressure and eldritch horrors that don't show up on radar. Every player has a role: engineer, medic, captain, security, or mechanic, and each one comes with specific tools, skill sets, and responsibilities. Fixing a leak means welding it. Navigating requires sonar and course plotting. Engine trouble? That's wiring, reactor tuning, and voltage regulation. Most jobs involve manual systems, not UI toggles, but physical in-game panels, switches, and tools. You don't just click repair reactor. You balance rods, monitor core temp, and hope you don't start a meltdown while you're fending off a husk-infected crew member. The game's simulation depth is part of the pain. Water pressure varies with depth, explosions cause decompression, crew members can bleed out, get addicted to morphine, suffer psychosis, or trigger a mutiny. Internal systems like oxygen flow, power grids, inventory lockers, and hull integrity are all tracked and breakable. It's not uncommon for one minor failure, say a clown lights a flare near the ammo rack, to cascade into fire, flooding, reactor breach, and eventually a full party wipe. Players love Barotrauma for its unpredictability and high-stakes tension. It's volatile, built on systems that don't care if you're prepared. The challenge isn't just solving problems, it's solving them while yelling at your crew, bleeding out, and trying to restart a nuclear engine from memory. Number 30. Vault of the Void. It might look like another Slay the Spire style deck builder, but Vault of the Void is much harder to break, and much less forgiving. This isn't a game about building overpowered combos, it's a game about resource tuning, deck mutation, and tactical tempo control, where every card you add introduces another variable to optimize or regret. Unlike most roguelike deck builders, you don't just pick cards as rewards. You build and manage a deck proactively between fights, swapping in and out cards from a sideboard, tuning energy costs, purging dead weight, and rewriting your entire approach every few floors. Each battle requires fine-tuned sequencing, not just which cards you play, but which ones you void, exile, or overcharge to feed multi-resource engines that span health, energy, corruption, and passive effects. Every class plays fundamentally different. The Disciple manipulates corruption to grow power while risking death spirals. The Hidden uses stealth mechanics and baited reactions. The Enigma bends time and triggers effects from exiled cards that don't even stay in your hand. These aren't just archetypes, they're entire systems with unique pacing, synergies, and self-inflicted vulnerabilities. Vault of the Void is not unfair, but it is exacting. It expects players to optimize, adapt, and rebuild around mistakes, not just accept a bad draw. It's often described as a deck builder for people who hate randomness, but in truth, it's for players who want full control and are willing to suffer for it. Number 31. Suzerain. At first glance, Suzerain will give the appearance of a visual novel about leading a fictional nation through a political crisis. But under the narrative framing is a ruthless web of policy trees, budget balancing, relationship modeling, and long-term consequence tracking, where nearly every decision you make comes back to haunt you, procedurally and narratively, dozens of hours later. You will play as the newly elected president of Swordland, tasked with rewriting a constitution, managing your cabinet, reforming the economy, and navigating a Cold War-style regional conflict. But this isn't simple dialogue choice roleplay. Every decision affects internal faction support, foreign diplomatic standing, and the fragile stability of your own regime. A single meeting could have a profound effect on GDP forecasts, while another might anger the military, or refusing to subsidize a factory could boost private investment while also leading to unemployment riots in your strongest voting base. What makes Suzerain overwhelming is that you rarely know what the right decision is until it's far too late. And data is always incomplete, advisors contradict each other, every policy has upsides and hidden costs, and most paths close off other branches entirely. The game tracks your economic model, political alignment, public approval, and legal authority, all of which can be independently undermined. The game is a systems-driven trap you're constantly walking deeper into, where the only question is, what kind of collapse will you actually be presiding over? And for players who thrive on long-form consequence management, Suzerain offers one of the most deceptively complex political simulations ever built. Number 32, Opus Magnum. So Opus Magnum looks like a satisfying logic game about assembling alchemical machines. It's elegant, clicky, mechanical. But you will soon realize it's not asking you to solve as much as it's asking you to optimize, and suddenly you're staring at a looping Rube Goldberg disaster that you're the chief architect of. Each machine you build operates on an open hex grid. You place arms, tracks, bonding tools, inputs, outputs, and then you write synchronized movement instructions across multiple parts. There's no timing buffer. Every arm movement must align with others frame by frame. Rotations, delays, pickups, extensions, all of it is programmed by hand. But there's a catch. The game doesn't just score you on completion, it ranks you on cycle count, area used, and component costs. So your working machine isn't good enough, you see. You're not just trying to make it function, you're trying to compress it into the fewest possible actions with the least number of moving parts. The complexity doesn't arise from the game hiding information from you, it gives you everything. It's that layers of efficiency becomes its own problem to solve, and the deeper you go, the more you realize that you could have done better. The open-ended nature of the puzzles means that solutions aren't just right or wrong, they're wasteful or genius. And the game will show you just how wasteful you are by putting you up against your friends' numbers and the global leaderboard. To some, it's meditative, but to others, it is a hellish puzzle generator disguised as a toy. Either way, once it has its hooks in you, every solution feels incomplete until it's perfect. Number 33, Line War. Line War is a real-time strategy with one twist. You don't directly command your units. You draw lines. That's it. Movement lines, attack lines, patrol paths. You sketch out intent, and your units interpret it, often with devastatingly literal consequences. There's no unit macro, and no ability to split forces mid-fight. The strategy lies entirely in how you draft and sequence commands, and the results depend on unit type, map layout, pathfinding behavior, and timing, none of which are explained in detail. You'll spend hours just understanding what a proper defense posture looks like, or how to delay an advance just long enough for a reinforcement to arrive without accidentally sending your entire air fleet into a meat grinder. The systems have the appearance of minimalism, but they're misleading. Economy, logistics, territory control, tech upgrades, and production all hinge on careful command layering. Lines overlap, stack, override, or conflict. You can easily issue a series of efficient-looking orders that collapse in practice because a unit interpreted your intent one tick too early. There's no pause button, just a relentless flow of consequences tied to your earlier imprecisions. So what makes Line War punishing isn't randomness, it's that the entire system is deterministic. Every failure is traceable, every mistake is your own misread, and because the interface gives you so little feedback, improvement requires rigid self-audit and often a complete rework of your entire command approach. For players with a craving for abstract precision over brute force, Line War is brilliant, but it demands your total commitment. Every line you draw is a test of whether you actually understood the systems, or if you just hoped that your units would. Number 34, Anno 1800. There is a point in Anno 1800 where growing your city stops feeling rewarding and starts feeling like you're barely keeping a fragile machine from tearing itself apart. What begins as a quaint trading port slowly mutates into a logistical nightmare where every new product, population tier, and island chain adds weight to an already overburdened system, and one missed supply link can trigger a chain reaction that stalls your entire economy. At its core, the game revolves around production chains. You'll turn wool into fabric, hops into beer, and steel into weapons, each requiring specific buildings, spacing, power sources, and workforce alignments. But it's not enough to just place the pieces. Warehouses need access, roads need to be optimized, your supply chains must support not only your home city, but distant islands producing unique resources. And when demand spikes, because a new class of citizen unlocked new needs, your old systems won't keep up. And atop all of that, the game will add diplomacy, trade unions, influence points, expedition systems, and the New World, where different climates and production types require entirely separate infrastructure, all while feeding back into your main city's needs. Each tier of society you unlock brings with it increasingly finicky demands, such as variety of goods, electricity, cultural venues, and specialized diets. You'll spend hours solving one bottleneck only to discover it was hiding two more. Anno 1800 doesn't flood you with challenge all at once. It lets you build a machine, and then watches what happens when that machine starts overheating. It's not about managing growth, it's about realizing your city is fragile, unbalanced, and 2 sausages away from civil unrest.
Number 35, Stationeers.
Every moment in Stationeers is maintenance. Even breathing takes planning. You're dropped on a remote station with nothing but tools and loose components, and survival means building up an airtight, self-sustaining environment from first principles. Gas ratios, power routing, atmospheric seals, and thermal regulation included. Air isn't a meter, it's a mix of gases that must be piped, filtered, compressed, and stored with correct pressure and temperature. Build your rooms too large and you'll run out of oxygen. Place one vent in the wrong location and your entire station might hemorrhage atmosphere when the power flickers. Cooling a single room can involve liquid pipes, logic controllers, and external radiators, all manually configured. Very few things are abstracted. Electricity must be wired. Engines need fuel and proper exhaust. Solar panels rotate with the sun. Doors are controlled by logic circuits. Automation isn't a late game feature. It's a requirement just to keep the lights on. If your waste gas isn't scrubbed properly, your crops will die. If your power load isn't balanced, your system's shut down, and if you fail to notice a fault in time, you might suffocate silently mid one of these tasks. Stationeers doesn't present its complexity with flair. It lets you uncover it one near-fatal oversight at a time. Every success is temporary, every failure is mechanical, and for players who want to build something that only works because they personally made it work, it delivers the full experience. Up next, number 36, Noita. There's no quick summary for Noita, just the growing sense that everything in the world wants to kill you, including your own spells. It's a roguelike where every pixel is physically simulated, and every effect, fire, water, electricity, poison, acid, smoke, velocity, heat, behaves according to rules that can and will betray you if misunderstood, and you will misunderstand them. The game's intricacies arise from the wands that you'll wield. Each one has stats like mana regeneration, cast delay, capacity, and recharge times, and the spells you attach can create effects that stack, loop, split, or detonate based on the order and timing of how they're cast. The advanced builds can behave like chained reactions, combining modifiers and triggers into destructive feedback loops that can clear entire biomes or just explode on the spot. Mastery means understanding how to build those chains, and thus how to keep them from turning against you. Beyond all of the wand fun, Noita hides an enormous number of systems behind experimentation. Alchemy recipes aren't explained, secret worlds exist beyond what the map suggests, and there are god events, alternate endings, full-scale modifiers, and world-breaking interactions that most players won't find, at least without digging through fan wikis. Even the terrain is out to get you. Entire caverns can collapse from stray explosions, and surfaces retain flammable residue long after you think they're safe. Every part of Noita is calculated and reactive, but the game never warns you how one system will interact with another. Progress comes from accepting that you're one miscast away from annihilation, and that knowledge, not skill, is what's going to keep you alive. Number 37, Space Station 13. There is no game quite like Space Station 13. It's a multiplayer sandbox where you and dozens of other players roleplay as crew members on a malfunctioning space station. Except every role has its own mechanics, its own tools, its own failure states, and no margin for error. This game is a simulated workspace with an open invitation to sabotage itself from the inside out. You can be a janitor, roboticist, bartender, atmospheric technician, AI, or captain. Each role has its own terminal commands, machinery, and hierarchies, and learning any one of them could take dozens of hours. Fixing a single pipe in the wrong location could decompress half the station. Medical staff must manage surgery step by step using real tools, chemicals, and blood loss timers. Engineers calibrate the power grid and set up the supermatter reactor, which, yes, can explode and kill everyone if mishandled. And that's before factoring in antagonists. Some rounds include hidden traitors, each with their own goals and powers. The game's chaos isn't scripted, it's emergent, a product of dozens of fragile systems stitched together by legacy code and community mods. Rounds can devolve into full-blown mutiny because the chef insulted the AI, or because a janitor welded someone into a locker. Space Station 13 is less about mastery and more about surviving the absurdity of a world that's too complex to manage. But for those who stick with it, it becomes a storytelling machine like no other. Number 38, Ourtward. In Ourtward, you aren't the hero. You're a debtor with a rusty sword and a deadline to pay off your dead parents' mortgage. There's no XP bar, no power fantasy, and no safety nets. Every mechanic, that is hunger, illness, fatigue, etc., stacks against you from the moment you step outside, and success means navigating systems designed to leave you cold, lost, and bleeding somewhere unfamiliar. Combat is slow, stamina-driven, and punishing. Healing requires sleep or rare items. Blocking at the wrong time can leave you bleeding or infected. Casting spells means memorizing rituals and using regents, not just clicking a hotkey. Lose a fight and you might wake up stripped of your gear, imprisoned in a bandit cap, or dragged halfway across the map by enemy NPCs. Even victory feels like a gamble if you, say, didn't pack enough food and starved to death, or didn't bring a torch before entering a freezing biome. Progress is built around self-reliance. There's no fast travel, no objective markers, no magic tutorial. Unlocking spells means traveling to specific locations, performing sacrifices, and accepting permanent stat reductions in exchange for magical ability. You must track quests manually, follow written directions, and learn how to navigate the world without help, otherwise you simply will not reach the next town alive. Ourtward isn't difficult in a traditional sense. It punishes carelessness, rewards planning, and it builds an identity around making you feel vulnerable even long after you've learned how to fight back. Number 39, Star Citizen. No game promises more than Star Citizen, and few have ever demanded more from the player just to get off the ground. Literally. From the first login, you're dealing with a multi-layered interface, poorly explained controls, inventory management with physical limitations, regional storage, ship access terminals, docking clearances, crime stat systems, and a flight model that changes depending on whether you're in the atmosphere, in a vacuum, or near a space station's jurisdiction. The game has been in alpha for 9.5 years now, so the complexity isn't just in the design, but it's also in the execution itself. Every ship has unique handling characteristics, onboard systems, component slots, and fully physicalized interiors that you can walk around in. In order to accept missions, you have to navigate through a stuttering UI overlay, often bugged, frequently mislabeled, and tied to factional rep systems that gate access to key income streams. Getting paid for a delivery mission requires you to physically load cargo, take off without crashing, quantum jump between sectors, land manually, deliver the cargo by hand, and then hope the server doesn't crash before you get your payout. There's no fast travel, no traditional pause, and no safety rails. One wrong button in EVA will launch you into orbit, or a mistimed jump can crash your ship into a moon. Forget to insure your gear, and death might lose you pretty much everything. Players are expected to manually fuel, refit, and repair between sorties while monitoring their hunger, thirst, temperature, inventory space, mission timers, etc. And this is assuming that the server isn't mid-desynced, or, the physics aren't bugging your cargo out into the void. As mentioned before, Star Citizen is still an alpha, but it already operates like a high-stakes simulation where success is defined less by mastery and more by endurance. Every system works. Barely. Every feature is interactive, inconsistently, and every moment feels like a test not of your skill, but of your willingness to live inside of a game that's trying to become 5 different games at once. Number 40, My Summer Car. You're a teenager home alone in the 1990s in rural Finland, and your goal is to build a car from a pile of parts in your garage. That's it. There's no tutorial, no guidance, no inventory system, no quest marker, just a collection of bolts, fluids, belts, tools, and disasters waiting to happen. My summer car is what happens when simulation stops being polite and becomes physically, emotionally, and mechanically unmanageable. The engine doesn't go in unless you mount the subframe. The subframe won't bolt unless the suspension is installed. The suspension can't be torqued unless you get the right wrench, and nothing in the game tells you how any of this works. If you get one bolt wrong, your car might run for a while before it ejects its guts on the highway at 70 kilometers per hour. Need a battery? You gotta buy one. You wanna buy one? Well, you need money. You need money? Well, you better get a job pumping sewage or delivering crates, and both of which require vehicles that can break down or be lost entirely if you die. Because, yes, you have stats: hunger, thirst, urine, fatigue, stress, and you can die from sauna misuse, wasps, traffic accidents, starvation, dehydration, electrocution, or just by stepping on the road at the wrong time. Saving requires using the toilet in your house, and autosaves do not exist. Everything has to be managed carefully, because the game only gives you one shot at getting your life together. If you die, you start over from the very beginning. In short, My Summer Car is a life sim where survival is plain inconvenient. The success is temporary, and every screw you forget to tighten is just waiting to teach you a lesson on down by the side of the road somewhere.